everybody, and welcome to the Friday Night Drive Western Suburbs podcast. I'm Josh Welge here with Joel Boenitz. Joel, we're indoors. We're talking football. Can't get much better than that. How you doing?
I'm doing pretty well. I mean, we're deep into the season, so obviously we kind of suspect that there'd be some days like this where it's a little dreary outside, but it wasn't like that this weekend, which I was very happy about, and got to see some pretty quality football games out there this weekend.
No doubt. I mean, we're going to start talking about the games, but that weather last week, man, I was thinking about that before the game. My game where just sun was on the field, was warm. And I'm like, man, it really doesn't get any better than this to have a quarterfinal in this kind of weather. But I don't know if we're going to get it this weekend. That's okay. We only have 2 games left, or 2 weeks left in the season. I think we can soldier through. But yeah, a lot of good football coming up, a lot of good football to discuss. Thanks everybody for joining us. And Joel will start to talk about last week's game, and kind of feel like I need to start with that crazy ending at Nazareth last weekend. Nazareth playing Lake Zurich. It was a game that with respect to Lake Zurich, I was fully expecting Nazareth to take care of business in that game. And I thought that way throughout the game, and I was following Chris Casey's updates, and I kept thinking, and even at halftime, I think Chris tweeted a score, and I think I texted him like, I still think Nazareth's going to pull this off. And I kept waiting. And then about the time that I'd kind of given up, that's when Nazareth decided to come back. I mean, they were down 21-9 with 3 minutes left, and Lake Zurich had the ball, and they had a 4th and short personal foul. They ended up having to punt the ball. Henry Sokolis for Nazareth blocks the punt. It's the first of 2 block punts, or the second of 2 block punts that Nazareth had. Nazareth goes down. Charles Calhoun scores a touchdown. Nazareth needs to do an onside kick because they're out of timeouts. Sure enough, Frankie Nichols, onside kick. Nazareth recovers. Nazareth drives down the field, probably a short field. Trenton Walker catches a touchdown. Nazareth wins 24-21. I mean, I don't know. That is about as wild of a finish I can remember. I know Chris texted me after the game. He's like, I don't know how I'm going to do this game justice after watching it. But man, what a crazy finish for Nazareth, and to have 2 block punts in a game. And then I was thinking, I mean, Frankie Nichols was a kid that he was rotating at quarterback with Jackson Fela for the first 4 or 5 games of the season. And I know Coach Tim Rackey called him his Swiss Army knife. And man, what a huge play there to get an onside kick and then they go down and win the game.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of mentioned, it's very hard to do those games justice. I feel Chris Casey on that one back in week 5. I mean, with that St. Charles North Batavia game, but that is what an incredible way to win a playoff game, especially in front of your home crowd for Nazareth. I know pretty much everybody didn't expect it to be as close as it was. I know while I was out covering my game, I was also keeping track of it. I saw the 21-9 score, and I'm like, what's going on with Nazareth? But of course, to come back and get that victory, move on to the semifinals for I don't even know how many consecutive seasons now for them. I mean, it's a really big thing, and it's definitely a big confidence booster. Even with how close it was, to get a victory like that, especially heading into this semifinal matchup, which I suspect will be a very similar scoring score-wise this upcoming week.
Yeah, well, it's the 4th straight semifinal for Nazareth. And the reason why I know that is because the last team to beat them before the semifinals was coincidentally the team they're playing this week, Fenwick. Beat them in the 2021 quarterfinals. Fenwick went on to win the 2021 state championship, but now they're obviously playing again. But man, what a win for Nazareth. And again, it was one of those games that Lake Zurich has a great defense. I thought Nazareth could figure it out, but you get so late in the game, you're thinking, maybe it's just not going to happen. But credit to those kids making plays late in the game on all 3 phases and pulling out the win. Great win for them.
For sure. And I mean, you kind of mentioned it, making those adjustments, no matter how late into the game it is always crucial to getting those victories. And, Nazareth just made those adjustments. It took a little bit longer than a half, but they got it done. So
Yeah, so that was a great win for them and a great finish. And there was another game that was a great win and a great finish, but it was involving a team that I didn't necessarily expect to win last week. I'm talking about Oswego and Maine South. Oswego going up to Park Ridge, getting the 24-21 win. Oswego's in the semifinals for the first time since 2003. Won the Class 7A state championship. And Joel, I tell you what, that was one of those games where, we get so caught up in our games, you don't really get to check in too much. But I remember at halftime of my game, I was doing stats and checking up on things, and I saw it was 14-14 at the half, and I'm like, what? I mean, Oswego is a very good team, but it's more of a matter of how good Maine South has been, really since the start of the season, since week 1. Funny thing is, Oswego got down in that game 14-0, which makes it even more remarkable. But I mean, they made plays, they forced a few turnovers, they got a touchdown and make it a 1-score game, get into the second half. And then a kid that I have talked about him on this podcast before, Mariano Velasco, he is a kid that if there is a play to be made, he is going to make a play. And he made a play. He had a pick 6. I think that's his 4th or 5th pick 6 of the season. That gave them a lead. He also caught 2 touchdown passes. He is a kid that if you want a kid on your fantasy team, he's a kid you want, because I mean, he only has like 25 catches though this year, but I think like 7 or 8 of them are for touchdowns. And then of course all the pick 6s. And then they go on to win. They hold on. Maine South scored a touchdown to get within a field goal. I think they tried like a 59-yard field goal as time expired or something crazy like that. But Oswego holds on. Again, great win for that program. Sets up a very interesting matchup between teams I don't know if we would expected in the semifinal with Oswego and Lockport. But Oswego, their defense, they've only given up 1 score in the second half over their 3 playoff games. And that was Maine South touchdown at the very end to draw within 1. Their defense has just got it done when the game mattered.
Yeah, and I mean, that's one thing that was kind of talked about at the beginning of the season. There was a lot of questions about how the defense would play, especially considering who they graduated last season in Carson Cooney at linebacker. There were a lot of questions is if the Panthers could keep that same momentum that they had pretty much all last season to go undefeated in the regular season. They had a couple of hiccups in the middle of the regular season, but it looks like during the playoffs, they have just locked in. I mean, you mentioned it. Mariano Velasco is a guy who is an awesome 2-way player, and he's been showing it multiple times throughout this postseason. And it just looks like they're clicking on all cylinders.
Yeah, the funny thing with this Oswego team is it's really last year's Oswego team was a team that really got all the attention, and understandably so. They went 9-0 during regular season. They won the conference championship. You mentioned Carson Cooney. They graduated all, but I think Coach Brian could list on one hand the number of starters he had back from last year. So there really was very modest expectations for this team, and I think they've had that chip on their shoulder ever since the start of the year, and they've had a great year and an even greater playoff run. So congrats to them. That was a really good win for Oswego. They move on to the semifinals. A team that I'm not surprised to see in the semifinals. A team that you saw last week, Batavia. They got a test though from Glenmar North. They pushed them, didn't they?
Yeah, I mean, in the second half, it was just kind of it was so weird because in the entire first half, it was pretty much all Batavia. I mean, they had 4 passing touchdowns in the first half. Michael Vanderloop-Guerin was spreading the ball all over the place, and pretty much everybody in the crowd kind of looked like it was like, oh yeah, we're making it back to the semifinals again. But then the second half happened, and Glenbard North just kind of turned things around, especially on defense. I mean, forcing back-to-back fumbles. They hadn't had a fumble since week 1 against Glenbard West.
Wow.
And they had back-to-back drives where they had a fumble, and all of a sudden it's a 1-score game. The Glenbard North had a chance to tie the game up, but Andrew Kulata, a defensive back, one of the few returners from last year's returning starters from last year's team, had a very big pick 6, went 67 yards for the touchdown, made it a 2-score game. Glenbard North brought it back to 1 score. Batavia had to punt it, and I gotta say, it was an absolute moonshot from a guy that we haven't mentioned at all this season, who was a starter for that Batavia team last year, Bodie Anderson. He punted it 50 yards into the air, into the wind, and the punt was muffed. Kulata was there to recover it, set him up in perfect field position to get a 2-score lead again. And then they went for an onside kick, kind of to ice the game, make sure same thing didn't happen for week 5. I guess who recovered it? Andrew Kulata. Wow. And that's what iced the game. So really big plays for Batavia down the stretch. But I mean, I talked to Coach Dennis Piron after the game, and he's like, it was a game that we felt like we were in control in, but also weirdly not in control in the entire time. I think they only had 1 first down on offense in that entire second half. So it was a weird game, but Batavia got it done, and they're back in the semifinals for the 4th straight season.
Yeah, congrats to them. They move on, and also congratulations to Glenbard North. Great season for them. After the 0-9 2023, 2-7 2024 to make it the quarterfinals. So Batavia moves on in 7A, as does Downers Grove North. The game that I was at last Saturday, Downers Grove North beats Lincoln Way West 28-10. A few stories on this. First of all, Owen Lanzu, the Minnesota recruit, he missed 4 games this year with a broken left arm, non-throwing arm. I don't know if you could play quarterback much better than he did in the first half last week. He was 15 of 18 for 209 yards and a couple touchdowns. He ran for 1. And one of those incompletions was a drop pass. Coincidentally by Will Val, an Illinois recruit who later made a spectacular one-handed catch. And another one was a throwaway, which was a really easy throwaway or a really good decision because he was under pressure. But man, Lansu, hit a couple deep balls to Max Troa. He is a kid that, he's just a smart quarterback. If the short throws are where he's supposed to go, he's going to do the short throws. If the long throws are available for him, he's going to do the long throws. He is just a cerebral, surgical type quarterback. Against Glenbard West, he really played the short game. Against Lincoln West, he played a little bit of the longer game too. Just a smart quarterback. You could tell he's in his 3rd year as a varsity starter. And man, he was just so good in that first half. And then it was kind of like, all right, we're up 21-3. Let's just get out of here. And then they just ran the football in the second half. But the other thing is their defense was really, one of the question marks for me going into the playoffs because they lost Aiden Selecki, their best lineman. It's going to Purdue in week 7 to a knee injury, and he's out for the year. But I really wondered how their defense is going to hold up in the playoffs. I said that to their coach, Joe Horeni, after last Saturday's game, and he laughed. He's like, that was a question mark that we had as well. But, he said their defensive line, their linebackers have improved, and their coaching is tremendous. And their defense has been really good in the playoffs. They kept Lincoln Way West out of the end zone until the 4th quarter. They did a great job against Glenbard West and Prospect, but their defense has been great, as has Owen Lanzu. So, they move on to the semifinals for the 3rd straight year, Downers Grove North. Before we want to take a quick break, a few other games. Again, I'm not surprised with any of these results, but impressive nonetheless. Montini continues to roll in 4A. We'll talk more about them in a minute. 35-0 over Cole City. I think they won 22 games in a row now. Fenwick, against a good Burlington Central team. Sounds like they pretty much kind of controlled that game. So a win for them. And then St. Francis, man, back in the semifinals for the 4th consecutive year. They beat King. They kind of took care of business then. So those 3 move on. And the Chicago Catholic League, 9-1 in the playoffs last weekend. Only loss was IC Catholic losing to a really good Byron team. So 9-1 going into the semifinals. Pretty good. Pretty good show.
I think that shows how good the Catholic League is. Once again, just seems like this is the case every single year where, the Catholic League just kind of shows its dominance throughout the playoffs, and this year it's no different.
Yeah, no doubt. Joel, I think we'll take a quick break, come back, and we'll look at the semifinal matchups this weekend.
SGKR Injury Attorneys tackles the toughest cases. I'm Matt Rundio. When life throws a flag, we go on offense to protect your rights. Don't get sidelined. Score a touchdown with SGKR. Visit us at sgkr.law.
At Oliver's, we are proud to serve our community. We serve up great customer service, quality products, ease of shopping, and we serve up delicious barbecued sandwiches at our fundraiser cookouts. So stop by Oliver's, 748 North Britton and Dixon, and help fund our local clubs and events.
In Illinois and into Iowa, the story of Shaw Media is a story of trust. Since 1851, we've been informing, connecting, and reflecting the communities we serve, large and small, rural and urban, suburban, and river towns alike. With dozens of local newspapers, radio stations, magazines, and specialty brands like Friday Night Drive and Starve Rock Country, we meet people wherever they are. We shine a light on local government. We celebrate Friday night touchdowns. We tell the stories that shape your day, from neighborhood heroes to the Chicago Bears. But what truly sets us apart is our people. The award-winning journalists, broadcasters, and storytellers who live here, work here, and care deeply about what matters most to you. We don't just report the news. We're part of the fabric of the places we serve, from the Mississippi to the Illinois, from the Fox all the way to the chain of lakes. Trusted for generations, still earning it every day. Shaw Media, your most trusted local source.
Back on the Friday Night Drive Western Suburbs podcast, Joel, we look at the semifinals, and I might borrow and do what we do with Seuss, is moving from 4A on up, so I don't forget some of these games. But start with 4A, Montini Morris. It's a game that, when the brackets came out, I think a few of us were sort of identifying as that might be for the 4A state championship right there. Montini has not shown themselves to be anything. I mean, they've moved up to 3A to 4A and they've barely broken a sweat. I mean, they've just been rolling and rolling and rolling. They got that 35-0 win over Coal City. Morris, on the other hand, I mean, they gave up 50 points to Metamora in the second round, which they won the game. They scored 64, but giving up 50 points is a lot of points. And then they really had to scratch and claw to get out of Geneseo with a 2-point win. So, I mean, I still think that this is going to be one of Montini's biggest tests along the way, but I'm leaning a little bit more heavily in Montini's direction, the way that their offense, defense, just everything is working in their favor. And it's also at Montini, which doesn't hurt.
Yeah, I've got to agree. It's looking like Montini's going to have a pretty good day on Saturday. But, I mean, Morris has shown, over the past couple of seasons how good they are as a team, just time and time again. And, even if they did have to claw out a couple of victories in, the past two rounds, it's shown that they've been able to play in close games, which I think is a big thing. Montini hasn't shown that in the playoffs yet. I mean, we predicted that game against Coal City was going to be close, but then they shut out Coal City. And that was, it was a result that I expected, but I didn't expect it in that way, I guess you could say. But, this is just, I'm really interested to see how this game turns out. Is it going to be close? Is it not going to be close? Your guess is probably as good as mine at the end of the day.
Yeah, I mean, Montini's, you're right. They've had very few, like, those close games this year. Obviously, that Fenwick game was one of them. The Carmel game is
Yeah.
Those were the two really close ones. But other than that, to their credit, they've really rolled teams. And you're right too about Morris. I mean, they've won and they can score, and they're used to being in big games. Their program, against public and private alike. So, they'll definitely are not going to go down easy. But I feel pretty confident in Montini in that game. We'll see. Moving up to 5A, and St. Francis plays Belvedere North, which was, I would say, next with probably Oswego and them were two of the really big stories of last weekend. Belvedere North knocking off Cary Grove in a lone Friday night game. And now they're going to host St. Francis. And, St. Francis are probably glad they're just not playing Nazareth in the semifinals. The last 2 years, it didn't quite go so well. But they're back in the semifinals for the fourth consecutive year. I don't know if this is the best St. Francis team in that bunch. I think it's really good, but I do like their chances in this game, with all the weapons they have at their disposal with all the receivers, with Brock Phillip. I don't know. What's your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I think Belvedere North, obviously they proved that they could play with some of the teams that were projected to do really well. They proved that last week against Cary Grove. They proved it a couple of weeks ago when they beat, Caneland in a very similar fashion. They've shown time and time again that, hey, even though we play in locked conference, we're still pretty good. We can prove it. And now they're playing in the biggest game in, their school's history, not in Belvedere history. But yeah, no, I think this St. Francis team is just really talented on all fronts. I mean, if you look at last week, Terrence Block was a really good two-way player for them last week. I think he had a couple of turnovers on defense, and then of course and I believe had a touchdown catch on offense. And that's just one of three really good wide receivers that they have in that room. Obviously, we've talked about Zach Washington and Dario Milivojevic multiple times throughout the year. And, I think it's just leading St. Francis to, having success. They've already got really good wins against Morgan Park and Prairie Ridge in the first two rounds. They had a little bit more than more than a one-score win against King last week, which I think they're pretty glad to have. But I would be I think they've got the track record to make it to the state final this year after falling in each of the last three semifinals that they've been.
Yeah, no, I mean, there's no doubt that the motivation is pretty clear and pretty obvious. And we were talking to Zach Washington over the summer about that, and him talking about that you're like, this is a year for us seniors to do it. It's funny, Belvedere North too, is that, they got Cary Grove last weekend, and Cary Grove is a team that, I mean, they never pass the ball unless they're like absolutely forced and back against the wall. Well, St. Francis can run the ball too, but they're going to put the ball in the air a little bit. So it's a different matchup for Belvedere North this week. But coming off of that win last week, a lot of momentum on their side. It's going to be at their place. That's going to be a tough environment for St. Francis to go into, but I do like their chances in that game. So, we'll see what happens. Moving up to 6A, a matchup again. When the brackets came out, I was kind of like, yeah, that'd be a pretty good semifinal. Nazareth playing in Fenwick. Nazareth, they're coming off of that, kind of escape act last week against Lake Zurich. Fenwick is rolled. I mean, Nazareth, again, 3-time defending state champion in 5A, moving up to 6A. Can they get back into the state championship? Fenwick is a team that I think me and Seuss have said so many times that we have underrated Fenwick that we can't say it anymore because we keep saying it and they keep winning. I mean, Jake and Tommy Thies have been tremendous. John Williams has been tremendous. I mean, this is pretty close to a toss-up game. I know going into the year, if you would have told me Nazareth Fenwick is a toss-up game, I probably would not have believed you, but I really strongly feel about that. I think this game could easily go either way.
I've got to agree with you. And I mean, you kind of mentioned it, Fenwick kind of is a team that not a lot of people were like, okay, there may be a chance, especially with back-to-back losses to end this season against Mount Carmel, who they played extremely close, and then Carmel that next week to end the season. But they have been rolling on all fronts, and they proved it with that big win against Burlington Central. I mean, it's been talked about a lot. The Rockets defense was really good heading into that game, and Fenwick just kind of ran all over it. Like, I should say, Jake Tice ran all over it last week. And, that's a team that is absolutely rolling. And like you said, I think this game could go either way. Nazareth has a track record, especially in the playoffs, to make these types of runs. Fenwick, this is the first time they're really doing this since 2021. Obviously, last time they did face Nazareth, this late into the postseason, they went on to win the state title. So I wouldn't be surprised if something like this happens again. I'm really excited to see how this game turns out, though.
Yeah, me, no doubt about that. Game at 1:00 on Saturday. I think I'm going to try to sneak over there for a little while to watch a good part of that game before I head back to Oswego for a 5:00 kickoff. So I do appreciate the staggered kickoffs there, guys. But anyway, we'll move up to 7A, a game that you're going to be at on Saturday. Batavia playing at St. Rita, of course. Batavia back in the semifinals and playing St. Rita. St. Rita, a team that, I mean, you know how it is with the Catholic League. I mean, the grind sometimes is getting there. I mean, they started the year 1-3, and then they were 2-4 after a loss to Naz, and they have really been on a roll ever since then. Really good quarterback, Stephen Armbruster. Brandon Johnson Jr., their running back. No, he's not related to the Chicago mayor, but he's had a very good year for St. Rita. Man, Batavia, I like the way they're playing. I've liked the way they're playing for a while now. I like their chances to get to the 7A championship game. It's a tough one there to go down to St. Rita and get that win. This is going to be a tough one for them.
It really is. And I think the key to this game is going to be how or who can play the most complete game in both halves. I think that's been one of the things about Batavia throughout the playoffs is that they've had really good first halves. I mean, they scored 35 points against Hoffman Estates in the first half. Against Glenbard North, they were up, or not Glenbard North, Glenbard East, they were up 28-7. Against Glenbard North, they were up 28-14. But in the second half, they were up 20. My bad, they were up 28-0 against Glenbard East. But it's been that second half where, teams have been crawling back. Both of the Glenbards kind of did that. I mean, I believe they got outscored in both of those games in the second half. So I think the big thing for them is who can play the most complete game. And especially against the St. Rita team that just won 56-42 against a Hersey team that knocked off the number one team in Class 7A. I mean, I think this is going to be a real big test for Batavia, and I'm honestly excited to see how this game turns out. I wouldn't be surprised if this game is decided in the fourth quarter, though. So we'll see how this goes.
Yeah. No, I would agree with that. So that 7A bracket, it's interesting. There's a couple matchups between very, very, very good public league programs or public school programs against very, very good CCL programs. So there will be a lot of interest, and I'm sure internet chatter about that this weekend with those matchups. The other one, Downers Grove North going to Brother Rice. Brother Rice, I feel like, Mount Carmel gets so much attention, and rightfully so. I feel like they're like one of the most under talked about great teams in the state, because they've just been rolling and rolling and rolling. And I remember at the start of the playoffs, I'm like, I really like Batavia a lot. I really like Carmel, the way they're playing with Trey Taylor. And all Brother Rice just keeps doing is just kind of just grinding teams up. I mean, they beat a really good St. Charles North team, and it sounded like the game was really never in doubt. And now Downers Grove North goes down there. I think, I'm not really making a big declaration here. I think Downers Grove North defense is going to have to be really good. And because I don't think Downers Grove North is going to be able to score a ton of points against that Brother Rice defense, which probably has the best defensive line in the state. So I think the defense for Downers Grove North is going to have to play really well. And again, no shocker here. I think Owen Lansu is going to have to just elevate his game and the game around and the guys around them to give them a chance. I think this is a really tough game for Downers Grove North, but again, similar to Batavia, they've been in a lot of really tough games. I mean, this is a team with, I think there's 6 seniors that were sophomores on that state runner-up they were starting sophomores on that state runner-up 2 years ago. And now they have a chance to get back. So a really tough matchup for them, but I do like that experience for Downers Grove North. And of course, I love the quarterback.
Yeah, and you kind of mentioned it at the beginning when we were talking about that Downers Grove North Lincoln Way West team or game. Owen Lansu is kind of a quarterback that can make those decisions. Okay, if I need to throw the small check down pass, I can do that. If I need to go deep, I can do that as well. He has that kind of surgical presence that you want from a quarterback. And I think that's going to be really important, especially against a Brother Rice team that is really good, because especially with that defensive line that they have, it's going to be really hard to establish the run in that game. I mean, looking at that game against St. Charles North, I believe they only allowed 5 rushing yards in the first half, which is an insane stat line, especially considering how talented of running backs that St. Charles North had. So I wouldn't be surprised if Downers Grove North goes through the air a lot in this game. And I think having somebody like Lansu in the backfield, who has proven time and time again to be kind of methodical with his passes, it's going to be really important, especially against his Brother Rice defense.
No, and what Downsville North will do too is that they'll treat the short passes as sort of like their running game. I mean, they'll throw the little 5-yard passes, hopefully break a tackle or whatever, and then that'll set themselves up in better situations. But Owen Lanza can really get the ball out and get the ball out fast and get the ball out with accuracy, which he's going to need to do against that Brother Rice team with a great defensive line. To try to avoid the pressure. And then again, it's going to be very difficult for them to run the football. I'm sure they'll try to run the football, but again, I expect them to kind of try to establish that short pass as sort of like their version of the running game. We'll see. Again, tough assignment for them, but a lot of experience there, and similar to Batavia, they want to get back to that state championship game. So, we'll see what happens. That's actually a 4:00 kickoff on Saturday, and it's going to be on WCIU. Our Scott Schmidt will be there as well, reporting on the game. So really looking forward to that one. Finishing up in 8A, Oswego playing Lockport. Again, it's a matchup that I don't know if when we drew the brackets out that we're like, all right, I think Oswego's going to be playing Lockport in a semifinal. But to their credit, I mean, both of those programs, Oswego we mentioned, they got a couple good wins, and then they got the big win last week against Maine South. And Lockport, I believe they lost like 3 games in a row earlier in the year, but they've just really been on a roll since. And I talked to Oswego coach Brian Cooney. He's like, they remind us a lot of us that they just kind of workmanlike. They do whatever they can to win the game. They obviously play really good defense. So I expect it to be I've said this many times. I expect this to be like a low-scoring, close game, but I really do feel strongly about that because I don't see a lot of points being scored in this game, and I think it's going to be a game decided in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, I've got to agree with you on that. I mean, kind of looking at, I know obviously we've talked a lot about Oswego's kind of path to this point, but looking at Lockport and who they've had to go through to get to this point, I mean, a Sandburg team who beat Lincoln Way East at the end of the season. You've got Homewood Flossmoor that pushed them to their limit, and then shutting out a Barrington team that looked unstoppable on offense. I mean, they're a really good team, and you mentioned it. I don't think anybody had this matchup on the south side of the bracket, but it's going to be a really good battle between these two programs. You mentioned it. Both of these defenses have proven themselves time and time again throughout the season, and I gotta agree. I think this is going to be decided in the fourth quarter, and I wouldn't be surprised if we see a 10-7 game.
Yeah, well, that Lockport beating 35-0 over Barrington last week. I know I texted Seuss about that. I'm like, how did that happen? Not that they won, but they won like that. And he's like, I still can't wrap my head around that. And if he can't, then nobody can. So, but that being said, Lockport does seem to play a lot of close games. And again, I expect it this Saturday to be a 5:00 kickoff. It's going to be a madhouse at Ken Pickerel Stadium. It's going to be a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to being there. Joel, I think that's it. I think we're going to get out of here. I expect that we'll be back next week to talk a little bit more ahead of the state championship games. Until then, I hope everybody have a good week, a good semifinal weekend, maybe a little good weather too. That'd be nice. So
hopefully.
We're going to get out of here. Thanks everybody for joining us. Have a great day.